This is Bill Romanowski, and you're listening to the 3-Point Conversion.
What up, everyone? This is Raphael Haynes, Mr. Controversy, here at Radio Road, Super Bowl 56, and we're here in Los Angeles. Did you miss me? And of course, I got two wonderful guests. Gentlemen, to my left, I have Mr. Michael Banffy. He is the LA Rams team doctor, one of the LA Rams team doctors. And also we got the one and only Mr. Solomon Wilcox. How are you all doing today?
Doing great.
Doing great.
Good, good. And Mr. Banffy, we know you're here representing Vericel. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, certainly. So Vericel is a company that actually has a technology called MACI. And MACI is a product that helps us restore cartilage lesions. So when someone has an issue in their knee, and they're getting swelling, locking, catching, that sort of thing, it's usually because they've damaged part of the cartilage, which is a smooth, glossy layer that covers the ends of our bones in our knee. And you need that surface there to have a smooth, almost ice-on-ice gliding surface. And so traditionally, once you have cartilage damage, it doesn't heal. It just gets worse and worse and worse, and then all of a sudden you're bone on bone and you're getting a knee replacement. But over the last 5 years, it's been FDA approved in the United States, where we can actually take someone's cells from their knee, grow that in a lab, and I can reimplant those cells into their knee. So when they have a little pothole, I can fill that in. That stops the progression of that arthritis and gets them back to full activities.
Wow. And then Solomon, when you played and you think about if they had technology like this, there'd be a lot of players that had longer careers, correct?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There was a procedure, it was called microfracture surgery, that they would use to treat, the same kind of injury that Dr. Banffy just described. But it wasn't a permanent solution. And oftentimes, it never left you feeling like you were completely 100% healed. This is a science that uses a patient's own cells to create a form of healing that's more long-lasting and more permanent. And so it's just new technology, and I think it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And they can take your healthy tissue and you can grow it on a cartilage membrane in a lab and then go back and reinsert it. And now you have that smooth tissue, that cartilage tissue surrounding the bone. Something that, back when I played 30 years ago, it wasn't even thought of that you could do something like that.
You heard microfracture, that was a wrap. Oh well, his career was over.
That's right.
So you talk about going to the lab. Most people hear that and they get nervous about that because they don't feel like it's organic. Can you speak on that, why they shouldn't get nervous about that?
Yeah, there really isn't any reason to be nervous about it, because there's all sorts of checkpoints where the cells are monitored and making sure that there's no bacteria that can get into that or anything of that nature. The issue with microfracture is basically what it would do is it fill that defect in with scar tissue that would be really easy just to break back down, and you still go on to that bone-on-bone situation. Whereas these are actually the patient's own cartilage cells that they just grow. And then once we have these cells, we can put them back in the knee. And I always use the analogy that it's like growing a garden of their own cartilage. And once that fills in that defect, it's as good as new.
Imagine, by the way, you have a beautiful lawn, right, in your front yard. And you have a patch that's brown. And you want to remove it. And what do we have? We have sod, right? So you get a patch of sod, you take off that square, and you lay another square over it, and it's seamless and it's beautiful. It's repair. That's kind of, and now I'm not the doctor here, but I'm just giving the example.
That's a great analogy.
So there you go.
So let me ask you this, Doc. When, especially like you look at Higbee, and I don't really want you to discuss his injury or anything, but as far as, with him wanting to play in the Super Bowl, how hard is it to tell a player if he can't go, you can't go? Like, do you cringe like, oh my God, I have to tell him this, or how is that?
No, I think that's one of the hardest parts of my job. Being on the sideline there, for the most part, it's pretty fun because injuries, they happen, but they're not happening all the time. But when we do have a significant injury, and you need to tell the player about that, and don't think that Higbee necessarily is one of these. I think he has a good chance to play, but telling them, say they have a fracture or a high ankle sprain where this is going to be several weeks out. It's a tough conversation to have, and unfortunately, nowadays with all the personnel that we have, there's a player liaisons that will help organize the family around the player. So, from a psychological perspective, there's a lot of things that have been put into it. So it makes it easier, but it's still certainly one of the hardest things I have to deal with.
And Solomon, when you were in that position when they told you couldn't go, or like, how did you take that? Was it always? I don't remember. I was much younger. But I remember back then, early 90s, 80s, when they were saying, I want a second opinion, as much as they say it now. So when you got that news, how did you react to that? And what was your demeanor?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think it starts with understanding that athletes put a lot of time and hours into their body, into developing their talents and their skills so that they can go out and play. There's a certain passion you got to have for the game to want to play this sport and want to be out there competing. The team camaraderie, right? Your own personal development, all of those things are put on hold when you're injured and cannot play. The team moves on and they move on without you. I've been on field where they're like, okay, let's move the drill down to the other end, and you're still laying there. And literally they move on while you're still on the ground. And it's a lonely feeling because you spend most of your time now in the training room recovering, but the team is still going out playing. They're still traveling to go play games. They're still in meetings and working out. And at the same time, you cannot develop as a player and work on refining your craft because you've had to stop down to go recover and rehabilitate an injury, which is not really part of your development process, right? So you're talking about that's a term what we call arrested development. And so in more ways than one, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. People don't understand that when you're coming back from an injury, you've got to recover psychologically, you've got to recover emotionally, as well as the physical recovery that takes place. So there's a lot going on when a player is injured and have to be away from the team. And in many cases, I'm telling you right now, it's a long journey back, depending on the severity of the injury and depending on how long you're out.
Doc, do you take it personal when, or offense to when someone says you give them a diagnosis and they say, I want a second opinion? Like, how do you take that? Is that like a slap in the face, or?
I wouldn't say it's a slap in the face. I think it's something to be expected. It's actually, I think, the agent's job to make sure that the player feels that they're getting taken care of, and part of that is getting second opinions. Fortunately, in Los Angeles, we have a great group of physicians, so it's rare that someone leaves to have surgery somewhere else if they require surgery. But I could see how you could see that it would be weird, but it's actually it's expected.
And coming from a former player, I think everyone wants it to be universally understood that this is the best course of treatment. Like, you all want to be in agreement with saying this is probably the best way that we should go to help the player fully recover. And the player's got to be all in. Think about it. We talk about it being a psychological point of needing to recover. He's going to have to be all in on his rehab process post-surgery, post-op. And he's going to need to be putting his best foot forward and mentally just being very positive about the recovery process. If you go into it with this fear and trepidation, I don't know that I'm doing the right thing, your chances of fully recovering are going to be hampered.
So I want to ask both of you all this, especially because players, you hear a lot of players talk about this, but not doctors. So the league, decided, hey, we want to make it safer. So as far as like the hits, you can't hit up top, but at the same time, like, you give the small area of window in a sense, with quarterbacks at least. But out as far as receiver, you can hit them in the legs, undercut them. How do you look at that? I know, you with the NFL, but when they changed that rule to you, did it make sense? Because I understand you protecting the head and all of this, but now you're leaving the defender to hit low if they can't hit high. So does that make it more difficult, you think, or dangerous?
Well, I think as a fan, we say that it takes away from the game because it's not as exciting, to see some of these hits where you'll have penalties that occur that used to not be penalties. But there is some significant science behind head-to-head contact, and actually, it's a lot of times the defensive player that's making the hit that's the one that's getting more injured than the offensive player. So I think that we really need to rely upon that science, and that also goes into the technology we have with the new helmets that are out there. We got to make sure that players are wearing the best equipment that's available. So I do think that sure it's sometimes it's frustrating with regard to if a ref doesn't call it or if they do call it. But from my standpoint, I think better safe than sorry, and to make the game safer is probably the right thing to do.
But what about the knees, though? I'm saying, like, now, because I understand that part, and I agree with it, but I'm saying at one point, they've gotten better at it, but you would see defenders go for the legs now because they can't hit high. They don't want to get penalized.
The point of emphasis is tackle the right way.
Right.
If we just this stuff, we've gotten so far beyond just teaching the fundamentals of the game. And there's always, these rules have always been on the books. You're not supposed to spear. Spearing is ducking the head and launching at the ball carrier.
Yeah.
If we would have just enforced that rule as opposed to trying to make up a new rule, we already had that rule on the book. We just weren't calling it. And so now we say, okay, you can't do this, you can't. Now you force a guy to say, okay, I can't do what they're saying, so now go for the legs. If we would have just said, look, the target area is from the shoulder, right, to the mid-thigh, and practice tackle with your head up. That's always been on the rule books. And I think we get people who creep into the sport, want to make their mark on it, and so they want to create something new. It's already there. We don't need more rules. We just need to enforce the rules that we already have.
Right, that makes sense. LA Rams play with the Bengals. First, Bengals being there, nobody gave them a chance, and they're there now. What do you think they need to do
To win?
win? Like, what is the thing that they need, the key moment?
We got to block Aaron Donald. Let me just tell you right now. If you can't block Aaron Donald, shut it down, forget about it. He will wreck shop. He's that kind of guy, and he knows he's getting at the end of his career. He knows that. Remember, he played in 2018. They came close. Him and Ndamukong Suh, man, I thought those guys were going to bring it home. Remember, they intercepted Tom Brady on the very first drive of the game. Yep. They kept the score down as much as any defense in the history of a Super Bowl against a great quarterback.
Yeah.
I think I think they only scored 10 points. The Patriots did that in that game. So listen, he gave a great effort. You don't think he's chomping at the bit in this one, knowing that this might be his last chance? So if the Bengals do not block Aaron Donald, they can forget about kissing that trophy because this guy is he really is that good. It starts with that, but it's been proven. If you protect Joe Burrow, you're in trouble.
Right.
Rams in trouble. If they don't get to him, this guy can get it done. He is that good of a player early in his career. So but listen, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. From Compton, California. I grew up a Rams fan. I am extremely happy for the Rams. I'm happy that they're back in LA. I'm happy that the NFL is back in LA, that we can, my home city can host an event like a Super Bowl. The very first Super Bowl was played in LA.
Right, yeah.
We ought to be doing this on rotation every 4 years right here in Los Angeles. It's plain simple as that. It's one of the biggest media markets in the world. Second largest media market in the country outside of New York. So yeah, this game ought to be played here, and Rams playing in it, I think is something very significant. The fact that they're hosting the Super Bowl and the Rams are playing in it. So this is a win-win for me, by the way. I just want you to know. And Dr. Banffy, obviously, he's pulling for his team as well.
And Doc, is there a time where, or has there been a time where game was good, a great game, like John was talking about, someone gets hurt, you have to tend to them, but it's fourth quarter, the Rams are driving down. They could. Is it one of them? You hear the crowd go crazy. You kind of look back to see what happened. Has it ever happened?
Well, I'll tell you what. During that last game against the 49ers,
Yeah.
I was back with one of the players, getting X-rays, and that's when we were down. And then all of a sudden we started coming back. Jalen gets the interception. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm bad luck. I just need to stay here in the locker room. We're winning now. So those things definitely go through your mind. That's for sure.
Yeah, and shout out to Dr. Fowler from Ortho Atlanta. So he comes on our show every show, and he gives us injury update. And we always joke with him. And I would ask you this. So I say, Doc, do you have certain places, like, for instance, we're just going to tell the truth, shame the devil. Like Anthony Davis, he gets injured a lot. He has to go, and you have certain players that just injury prone. God bless him. But is there any time where you that guy gets hurt again? You're like, all right, come on, I already know. Come on, come sit down. Like, yeah, what's wrong now? Do you ever get that moment, or?
Yeah, it's not just the Rams that I take care of, but in all of our teams, we just have guys that I wouldn't necessarily say they're even more injury prone. Some guys, just are more in tune with their bodies and want to be, checked out. So we'll see guys, more often, on sick call on Monday mornings as well. So, I think that every injury is real. We're going to take everything seriously. But yeah, there certainly are some that are more prone than others.
All right, before we go, I gotta ask you, Solomon, hardest hit you ever had? Who you been hit by or you tried to hit? Who has that been?
Every hit that I've ever sustained, I've been able to get up from.
Okay.
So I mean, that's a blessing.
Hey, could you walk? Look, he's been walking right with these Jordans on, looking fresh.
You can get hit and not get back up, but I've been fortunate enough to get back up. And I think if you're asking me the hardest I ever hit a guy, I remember in college, we were playing University of Oklahoma, and I thought the guy had me beat because I had to spin around. We do what's called a center field roll. If they beat you inside, you got to turn your back to them and spin around, but it puts you in a position to be on top of them. And as the ball arrived, I arrived. I think the ball flew one way, helmet flew another way. It wasn't my helmet, it was his helmet. and man, he was down there, and I remember him just he was gurgling, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't mean to do that. And that's what people don't realize is that I never celebrated hitting a guy and watching him be hurt and then celebrating that. I never would do that. Most guys who play at this level, you don't want to hurt. You certainly don't want to maim anyone. You just don't. Because we all have families to take care of. We all have, friends. We support one another. We're all part of a players union, right? We really do want to take care of each other. So I know it's great for fans to see hard hits, and I get it. It's all part of the game. And listen, if I can get this guy off the field and it improves our chances of winning, I get that. But we're not trying to hurt anybody. Particularly, we're all old guys now. I just saw Eric Dickerson over there, and we just were talking. I remember I had to tackle that guy. I would have loved for him to lead the game. It makes our chance of winning much easier. But later in life, you see each other, you don't want that guy to have any less of a life because he's been maimed or hurt permanently. So that's kind of how we do see it through that prism.
All right, well, there you have it. Dr. Mike Banffy, and we have Mr. Solomon Wilcox. We will be back later on with more interviews. Don't go anywhere, y'all. We'll be right back.